Welcome to the February 25th regular business meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. We had the Finance Administration Committee early this morning, and then we had a really excellent 2-hour workshop, 2+ hour workshop on long-term water supply. And we'll hear more about the Finance Administration Committee later. We have roll call, please.
Directors Coleman, excused. Katz.
Present.
Lenny.
Here.
McIntosh.
Here.
Mellon.
Present.
Patterson.
Present.
President Young.
I am here. I'll join in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. There are no announcements from closed session. Is there anyone who has public comments for items that are not being considered on today's agenda? Okay. Then move on to the consent calendar. We're going to pull item 7. Are there other items on consent, items 1 through, is it 11? 1 through 11 that anybody would like to remove?
Just a brief report on behalf of the Finance Committee that the Finance Committee recommended item number 10.
Okay. All right. So do I have a motion to approve items?
I'll approve the consent calendar minus item 7.
Okay. Second? Is there a second? Second by Frank. All those in favor of passing the consent calendar?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. That passes. Item 7, we have somebody who wishes to make public comment. Do we want to hear the item?
We should hear the comment first.
Okay. Andrew Clue?
Good afternoon. That's pretty close. Andrew Plow.
Thank
Good
you.
afternoon. I'm the Deputy Director of the West County Wastewater District. And I just wanted to thank you for considering item number 7 here. And we've appreciated working with Eileen and her staff. They've been very professional in us trying to get this thing over the finish line. And we're looking forward to a continued partnership. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry for the mispronunciation of your name. Okay.
I would move item 7.
Second.
Great. I think Director McIntosh and I are very happy to join in that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that
Thank you, sir.
Passes unanimously. Thank you, and we look forward to working with, I can't see you through the podium, but understood. I think Director McIntosh and I are going to join you and other board members next month? Date to be determined, yet to be determined?
Date to be determined, yeah.
Okay.
I was at West County approved the agreement last Wednesday evening, and what the West County Board requested is they'd like to have a tour of Ware, so we thought we would do it. That would be the joint, and we'd offer it to our board members too, to do a tour of Ware for a lot of you who haven't seen it. And they're excited to see it and see the water being put to use.
That would be super.
Great. Okay, next up, we have items under determination and discussion, including the water first step, item 12.
All right, so this is a subject of discussion this morning during the Finance Administration Committee, supported by the committee. Our treasurer, Robbie Haney, is going to provide a brief update for the board.
Okay. So good afternoon, President Young and members of the board. I'm going to briefly go over the fiscal year 2020 budget amendment for paying down commercial paper. Okay. So as you're aware, we had a strong budget performance in 2019. That included higher than budgeted revenues and lower than budgeted expenses, and that was for both systems. And that led us to have available funds at the end of fiscal 2019. And one of the strategies that we proposed during that time when we presented this in October was to pay down a portion of our commercial paper. And so what this item is seeking approval for is paying down $24 million in water system commercial paper and $5 million in wastewater system commercial paper. This is a slide that we showed at the October Finance and Administration Committee meeting back in October. And it shows here the $129 million comes from our higher than budgeted revenues, lower than budgeted expenses. That led to $129 million available funds. And we proposed 3 strategies to consider. One was to adopt lower rate increases for 2 years, which we did. One is to pay down a portion of our commercial paper, which we're talking about now. And then the third was to retain a portion in fund balance. So this slide is all for the water system. This is a very similar slide for the wastewater system, again with higher than budgeted revenues and lower than budgeted expenses. We had $23.8 million in available funds, and we offered or proposed the same 3 strategies: lower rate increases for 2 years, pay off a portion of commercial paper, and retain a portion in the fund balance. So just as a quick reminder, commercial paper is a form of variable rate debt issued as short-term notes. The water system has what we call a traditional commercial paper program, where it has backup liquidity support from a bank. And the wastewater system has extendable CP, which doesn't require backup liquidity. In fact, if we were to ever not be able to roll the notes, which is highly unlikely, but if it were to occur, we can extend the CP 150 days, the notes 150 days, and that should give time to refinance them if needed. And we have on the slide the amount of CP outstanding: $360 million for the water system and $15 million for the wastewater system as of today. And then the cost of carrying that CP are, of course, the interest costs, and those are variable. They can change over time. We have remarketing fees, liquidity fees for the water system, traditional CP, and then there are a few other support costs we pay to have the CP outstanding. So to implement the pay down from using the fiscal 2019 available funds, we need to amend the fiscal 2020 budget. And while this increases the dollar amount of the budget, it is dollar for dollar decreasing the liability on the balance sheet. And then there are some residual cost savings from that for having lower debt. We presented this morning at the Finance and Administration Committee meeting. And I should point out, this is only for paying down a portion of CP this year, and it's just a portion of it. If we were to pay it down further in future years, it would be based on the financial condition and the sort of financial outlook at that time. So our recommendation to the board is to amend the budget for the water system by $24 million and the wastewater system by $5 million to pay down a portion of our commercial paper. And with that, I'll answer any questions you have.
Questions?
I move the item.
Second.
Motion? Is there a second?
I said second.
Oh, didn't hear you. Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor?
I was trying to formulate a question, or if I had a question somehow. What's the interest rate that we're paying on this commercial paper?
So it averaged in 2019 around 1.5%. It's a little bit lower now, it's closer to 1%. So the rate is pretty low.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it follows short-term rates, and short-term rates are low right now.
But on top of that, as you pointed out, we do have to pay for the liquidity service provider, which was a previous action.
That's right. So another 30 basis points, or 0.3% roughly, for the liquidity provider, and then another like 7 basis points for remarketing. There are other fees with it. The other thing about CP, it follows short-term rates when things are stable, and they're stable now. There are risks to variable rate compared to fixed rate. Like when we issue fixed rate debt, let's say we're locking in 3%, it's 3% for 30 years. That's just what it is, no matter what. CP does come with it. We're exposed to our liquidity bank because investors are buying it when they look at the liquidity bank and looking at that credit. The rates themselves can go up. If there were ever any big disruption at EBMUD, then that could affect the rolls or whatever. So there are risks to CP that aren't captured in kind of the rate you're getting today. The other thing about the CP is it's actually been outstanding a long time, and all of our other debt amortizes. You know, if we borrow for something today, we're going to pay that debt off within 30 years. We've paid for some projects with the CP that's been out there a while, and so we've been wanting to look for an opportunity to start amortizing this like our other debt. There's no schedule built into it that says we have to, but traditionally the way you would use CP, usually they describe it as a credit card. You're kind of using it for a while and then refunding it, using it for a while, refunding it. It's been a while since we've done much with
I'd
this.
like to have a credit card with the 1.5% interest.
That's right. It's a credit card with a good interest rate, so, yeah.
Robbie, you could also talk about the
like a line of
relatively
credit.
small pool of, associated with this in terms of, it's not like there's an infinite source of CP funding.
Of the people who buy it?
Right.
Yeah, so the extendable one that we have is actually interesting. Not a lot of people have that. The one I was talking about that doesn't require the backup bank, it's like if it ever can't roll, the investors have to hold on to it for another 150 days, which is good for us because we want time. But the pool of buyers for that is very small. I think it was a product that was kind of invented during the financial crisis because all these liquidity banks were having trouble. And then it's like, what can we invent that doesn't rely on them? The problem is that market has kind of shrunk, and that's been trading fine, but we're reliant on a few buyers. It's 15 million, it's not huge. We can kind of do anything with it. If we move forward with this, we'll take out 5 million of it, that'll leave 10 outstanding. So it hasn't worried us. In fact, we used to, I believe, have the 360 million, looking at Sophia, the 360 million in extendable as well for a period of time, and when we decided that market got too small, we went back. We didn't want to be 50% of the CP rolling that day or something. I don't know if that's the number, but like our traditional CP is part of a bigger sea of, I actually was talking to our dealers last week, and the primary buyer of those are money market funds, in case that's kind of interesting. But so on the long-winded way of saying on the extendable CP, there is limited buyers. So
I guess the other question related is this a particularly good window, or do these windows come and go to be able to purchase this back, or is it an ongoing thing? Or
that's a really good question. Because it's variable rate debt and it's rolling all the time, there's no kind of good or bad. I mean, if rates were high right now and we're paying 8%, that would be very unlikely. But if we're paying 8, then yeah, get rid of it. But you don't know if when you're paying 8 next week it's going to go down to 6. So you can really pay it any time. The other thing is, if we ever wanted this variable rate debt back, you can kind of get it back anytime. You can issue more variable rate debt. So, and there might be, if we were to do that, there might be thinking there's other types of variable rate debt. We have something called VRDOs as well. We currently hedge them with swaps, and this might be more than, but like we could, yeah, you don't have to do, the swaps were.
I don't want to hear about swaps.
Yeah, okay, good, yeah. We'll be happy when we don't have swaps anymore. But we can always up our variable rate debt too. So this brings it down a little bit. We could bring it up in the future. And like a credit card, we could expand the CP in the future and go back. The nice thing about this is it is paying off some debt that really is tied to some projects that go back a long time. So.
All right. Satisfied.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
It was unanimous. Okay. General manager's report.
Right, so we'll move from money to water and ask our manager of water operations, Dave Briggs, to provide us an update on the status of water supply.
Good afternoon, President Young. Good afternoon, members of the board. You heard the long view this morning during the workshop, so now you'll get the real-time and near future view of the water supply, which could be a little better. And we'll talk about statewide conditions along the way. And I wanted to start showing you the water production, which we normally start with. And the last several updates, we've been saying that our production for this year, which is shown in red, has been tracking more or less on top of last fiscal year's water production. And as we alluded to last time, we thought that with February being so dry and warm that we would start to see a departure, and sure enough, there it is, a dramatic departure from last year, which had significantly different climate in the month of February. We've almost reached the level of the blue line, which is our fiscal year 05 to 07 average. Now, we won't track that for long. We're not seeing a dramatic change in the demographics or the habits of the customers. We're just likely seeing an early onset of the irrigation, or at least a temporary onset of irrigation out there. We'll see what the rest of the season holds for us, but after a few months, we'll join back up again with the green line or slightly above it. We previously forecasted roughly 164 MGD of water production on average for the fiscal year. we might click that up a couple MGD, 165, 166, based on what we're seeing right now. Okay, so now the bad news. Up country, above Pardee, upper McKelmy watershed, we have not seen much. We've seen a few inches really since mid-December. We picked up 1/100 of an inch in the upper McKelmy watershed in the last 2 weeks, next to nothing. The next 7 days do not look good. The 7 days after that, which we have to assign a little bit of a grain of salt in terms of the accuracy and the validity of those forecasts. There's something hinting at the weekend of March 7th, but that's 2 weeks away. It's hard to put any credence in that. But at least the next 2 weeks look relatively dry. That said, we're 57% of average in terms of precip in the upper watershed, and you'll see how the rest of that manifests itself with the snow and the storage. Locally, really probably too much preoccupation with the media and the staff at the National Weather Service with, will we actually get a 0 month of February in terms of precip? We haven't had 0 precip in our service area, at least west of Hills, since 1953 in the month of February. San Francisco has not had a 0 February since 1864, when Abe Lincoln was president. Really, there is a whisper of a storm that might grace us this weekend. It's just a question of, is it going to come before or after midnight on Saturday, which is the crossover between February and March. But more than likely, we will not have any precip before midnight on Saturday. So we could end February with 0.00. And as I said, the first week of March, we're pretty much writing that off already with what we know, 43% of average to date locally. So the snow, we got most of it right after Thanksgiving, first couple weeks of December, and with a couple other minor storms along the way, the snowpack has been more or less constant for months, and it's slowly melting. Satellite photos this year, mid-February, last year, mid-February, last year's on the left. You can see a dramatic difference. Now, this February of 2020, we're only seeing snow confined 6,500 feet and above, more or less, maybe even higher. Not a lot of snowpack. And this photograph was taken, I think, last week. This is from Kirkwood looking south across our watershed. You can see some of the ground now starting to appear, and the lower levels, there's hardly any snow at all down there. So the real numbers for our depth of snow, 60% of average, water content 67, those have been dropping week by week. And our storage, we've dropped about 10,000 acre-feet system-wide in the last month or so. The river upstream of Pardee is flowing at about 220 CFS right now. It's very low. You could walk across the McKelmy River at Highway 49 and maybe not get your knees wet. It's pretty low. So we're in balance right now with the river and what we're diverting into the aqueducts. So as demand goes up and the snow melts, if the season doesn't change, if the hydraulic doesn't change, we'll be losing out of Pardee here pretty quickly. Statewide, about 50% average for the snowpack in the southern, central, and northern Sierra. Haven't heard anything from the State Water Project allocation-wise lately. The CVP, a few hours ago, just announced their initial allocations for the CVP, Central Valley Project, federal water. Agriculture is really low, 10% in the Friant, 15% south of Delta Ag, 65% municipal and industrial, and then north of Delta, municipal and industrial is 75%. That just got released. So the Bureau will update that as the season progresses, and we'll see if it comes up. The graphic on the right showing you our snow water content, just giving you a sense that there's still reason for hope. So 2 years ago, we were only, believe it or not, we were at 19% water content, percent of normal, just 2 years ago. However, when we were up here 2 years ago giving the second briefing in February, we knew what was coming days away and a week away because we could see the storm starting to stack up across the Pacific. So even though we were only at 19%, we had reason for optimism. A little bit different this year. We're higher with snow content, but there's just nothing in view right now, at least for 2 weeks. Okay, so getting us back to the watershed and what we've seen so far. 18 inches or a little over 18 inches to date, 57% of average. And forecasting forward, a 1 in 10 type of wet hydrology will not get us even to average. A 1 in 10 type of exceedance, dry hydrology will get us above 1977, but that's a club you don't want to be in. So we'll see where we go from here. There is still time, as I said. The first half of March probably not going to be a game changer, but the second half of March, April, May, first 2 weeks of June, there is still time. And then just hitting this again from a storage perspective, looking at where we are moving forward to the end of the water year, we can see that under the wetter type hydrology will be about full carryover going into next year, but we would need a 1 in 10 type of wet hydrology from now forward to get there. Median will get us, mid-range 570, 1,000 acre feet carryover. The 1 in 10 dry hydrology from here out gets us to 500,000 acre feet of carryover. So we don't know what path we're going to be on. We could be on the blue, the green, or the red. It really remains to be seen. But we will be prepared for the red if that's where we track. We'll be prepared for the red, especially for next year. So I wish it could be a little bit more cheery news, but that's where we are.
Dave, maybe I'll just add to this. So the red puts us at effectively 500,000 acre feet, as board members know, is our threshold for whether we're in or out of a drought. So, if we're at 501, theoretically, we're not doing anything, and if we're at 499, we're taking action to have a conversation about asking our customers to do voluntary rationing. Of course, it's a continuum, but I'm just providing two, points on either side of that number. And so we are, if we had no more rain, which seems very unlikely, right? The probability of that be extremely unlikely, but that'll put us below 500. So we're beginning, just in an abundance of caution internally, to have conversations, warming up our internal drought committee, and just beginning to position the things that will come to the board then next month. Dave will provide a little bit more granularity, assuming we don't have any rain and don't see anything on the horizon around, what does zero rain look like?
Yeah, I think the value of the first briefing in March will be, the hydrology won't be much different, but we'll at least see 2 weeks further into March. Right. That'll probably be the most beneficial thing.
And then we'll start bringing some additional information to the board to stimulate thinking. April, we bring the water supply availability deficiency report to the board, where you can understand what our proposed actions are based on the projected storage at the end of September. So we've definitely given a lot of thought, and please keep your fingers crossed for some precipitation.
Thank you.
Thanks. And also at your places, continuing GM report, we have the Speakers Bureau and Outreach record for upcoming events, and also will be the conversations are happening with board members, and we'll be working to conclude in the next couple of weeks on the approach that would accommodate board interests for award briefings.
Okay. Now, move on to reports and director comments. First up, the February 11th Planning and Ledge HR committee minutes are included in today's packets. We have a report from the, kind of like we've had reports from what the Finance Administration Committee did, but is there a report from the Finance Administration?
The Finance and Administration Committee met this morning. They received a report on the fiscal year 2020 semi-annual budget performance. All's well. The fiscal year 2020 water and wastewater systems budget amendment for commercial paper paydown was recommended by the committee. We just passed that in session. The interest rate swap portfolio summary report was given. The 2020 strategic plan update very good presentation. And the plan remains intact. The monthly investment transaction report and the quarterly financial reports were both reviewed by the committee. That is my report, Madam President.
Thank you, Director Patterson. The full board convened this morning for a workshop session to get an overview of the district's water supply, current and planned activities to ensure water supply reliability. We heard about water conservation, recycling, demand projections, long-term, as well as about partnerships that we have with other water agencies. The workshop was well attended. We had a number of public comments, and it's one in a series of workshops that leads up to our decisions related to the budget, and encourage members of the public that are interested to look for the summary of that report on the website and to review it. We're on to item 15, which is other items for future consideration, which should be submitted to the general manager. And then item 16, director comments. Are there any comments from our directors? Director Mellon?
Actually, just one comment. I've learned that Susan Bell has done the unthinkable. She's decided to retire, and her last day is going to be this Friday. And so I would like it, which is, tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Worse yet. So I'd like, us to note in the minutes that we appreciate her time and that we will be missing her, or at least I hope we all will be, and I will be, and say good luck to her. And I already gave her my standard wish for anybody that retires. I hope she gets more out of the retirement fund than we put in.
Any other director comments?
I wanted to acknowledge, especially to Ms. Hill for standing in for me at the Just Cities, the Ron Dellums Foundation, in their presentation this past Wednesday. I did receive an award. I guess I'm getting so many legacy awards, I'm getting weary of being a legacy. But I do appreciate the staff support, and I'm honored by that group. And I wanted to congratulate all of the other recipients, including Barbara Lee, who were on that program and did receive awards. It was a great night, according to Ms. Hill, and they were able to do a video of me with many of the attributes of my career, especially related to the civil rights movement and to East Bay MUD. The other offering that I wanted to bring to your attention was that this is truly a historic month, and people ought to remember I kind of celebrate it all year round, but a lot of the accomplishments coming out of the Black history and the civil rights movement are responsible for many of the good things that we enjoy today. And I did want to thank the committee here at East Bay MUD for what they've been doing to exhibits and whatnot, and it continues. I always felt a part of that committee, and I will be making a donation to the committee related to the East Bay MUD Black History Month celebration. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Patterson. I think that's it. I hope everybody has either sent their absentee ballot in or is planning on making a visit to the polls a week from today. because we will next convene on March 10th, and we'll know what happened. At that point, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.